Welcome, beautiful people of all ages, shapes, and colors, to another episode of the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, where we encourage you to stick to the basics. I'm one of your hosts, TV, aka TV on Basketball, alongside my co-host, Jay, aka Knockdown Jay. How's it going, my guy?
Ladies and gentlemen, we are here. I have to say it every single podcast because we get a day closer every single time, but we are encroaching on the beginning of the actual NBA playoffs. As of when this comes out, the bracket should be set. I think, right? And at that point,
it depends on when it comes out on the Friday. It might come out before the play-in, but
yeah, true,
you know what I mean. Yeah.
true. Either way, you guys, us together, all are going to experience yet another NBA playoff series run, right? Because last year was the second time, I want to say, second or third time that we've been through this process, and every single NBA Finals has seemed to go upwards. I think every NBA Finals since we started the podcast has gotten better and better. And even though we had a pretty injured run last season, we had some crazy moments that I wouldn't rewrite. So hopefully it's start of another good one.
100%. I mean, the play-in is already doing a damn good job of, setting us up. This play-in tournament has been absolutely crazy, but I feel like we say that about every single play-in tournament, so should be super fun. And like we said off the top, we're going to be predicting all these series, all 8 series. Whether we know the 8th seed or not, we're going to try and predict all of them. And it should be a pretty good episode. It should be definitely one of those where we get into the weeds sort of episodes. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. And we're going to break down some NBA basketball. But Jay, before we do that, we do have to plug our other socials. Make sure you follow our individual socials at TV on Basketball, at The Routine Jumper. Those links can be found in the description down below. In terms of the Hit Your Fields podcast, make sure you follow us on TikTok and Instagram for the best daily NBA content. This is where you get the playoff game recaps. This is where you get the clips, the different news, all that stuff. Make sure you follow us over there for the daily content. In terms of YouTube, remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you will not miss an episode. And if you're listening to us on any of the podcast networks, Spotify or Apple, make sure you leave a review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We appreciate all of y'all's support. Jay, you ready to get into this?
Yes, sir.
Yes, and we're not going to beat around the bush. Let's get into it. And I think we got to start off with the 1-8 matchup. And we're going to start off in the East. We got the Detroit Pistons taking on either the Orlando Magic or the Charlotte Hornets. And Jay, if I speak for every NBA fan, there's one team that we want to see in these playoffs more than the other. And let's be honest, I think that team probably doesn't want to be there either. So definitely something definitely something interesting going into it. But Jay, we got one of the hottest teams in the league potentially going on to the 8th seed. One team who's just falling down the standings as we speak. Do any of these teams stand a chance against the Pistons?
Yeah, so the Pistons are in a really interesting spot here because kind of regardless of who they face, they're getting a tale of two different teams, but they're getting styles that I think they play relatively well against. Now, For example, you play against the Orlando Magic, the team that doesn't seem like they really want to be here right now, as you mentioned beforehand. There's a real size advantage that comes to favor the Detroit Pistons. And you wouldn't think so with all the wings that the Orlando Magic play. But I don't mean size as in literal. I mean as far as physical play style. These are guys, Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham, Asar Thompson. These are all guys who play really above what their size even is. All these guys play like legitimate 7-footers as far as physically getting to the basket and putting pressure on the rim. Those are things that the Orlando Magic struggle with mightily throughout this season as far as rim pressure is concerned, because Wendell Carter Jr., he's a solid a solid rim protector, but nothing to like write home about as far as like really being able to contain someone like a Jalen Duren, for example. I think on the flip side of it, you talk about the Charlotte Hornets. The joke this past week has been like the Charlotte Hornets are if the Boston Celtics and the Indiana Pacers had a baby. That's what this team looks like as far as play style. And it's funny that they say that because ironically, this team is both, top 5, top 7 in pace of play, but also this team is shooting 37.8% from beyond the arc as a team. On 43 attempts, which if I'm not mistaken, is second in the NBA behind only the Golden State Warriors while shooting better than the Golden State Warriors from beyond the arc. This is a team that likes to get the 3 ball up. That's another one of those situations where, again, Detroit can just out physical you. Am I worried about Musa Diabate down low against Jalen Duren? Nah, Jalen Duren been a grown man since Memphis, bro. Am I worried about someone like Brian Kalkbrenner against Jalen Duren? Nah, I'm not really worried about him, because if you're worried about what he can do next to Jalen Duren, I'll just send Isaiah Stewart to go get him if he comes back to this series healthy. There's still question marks about that, if I'm not mistaken, as well, if he'll be like full go for this opening round series. But nonetheless, I think the physical nature of the Detroit Pistons is going to be enough that regardless of these two teams, maybe the series is a little bit more competitive with Charlotte just because they've got lightning in a bottle stricken right now with the way they've been playing on offense. But I think that physical nature, especially with the playoff whistle TV, man, it feels like a Detroit kind of series, bro.
Oh no, 100%. Especially with the idea. I mean, this is like, I mean, obviously you don't want to be part of the play-in, but a big part for the playoff teams specifically is trying to get healthy for the playoffs. And a big part of being healthy for the playoffs is, like you mentioned, Isaiah Stewart is back in the lineup. And with Beat Stew on this lineup, the defense is now, at full strength, top tier. You got to remember, Jay, Beat Stew was one of the top candidates for a potential all-defensive selection before he got injured. So you have one of the best defenses in the league, one of the most physical teams in the league. And I just don't think, like you mentioned, any of these teams would give them bother. Sure, the Charlotte Hornets may keep things close because they have that extra element, which is the three-point shot. And, like you mentioned, the lightning in the bottle type of aspect run that they're having. And, of course, it's going to be more entertaining, obviously. I mean, we've seen what they did in the regular season. Yes, the Pistons, beat them 3-1. But it could get real chippy, which that's what a lot of NBA fans want to see. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Because no matter what, between these two teams, Cade Cunningham's going to be the best player on the team. They're probably going to have a lot of, the better role players on the team. And then you mentioned the size, the physicality. It doesn't matter, any of these sort of matchups. I love Musa Diabate, love the energy he's bringing. He's not going to hold a candle to freaking Jalen Duren and Isaiah Stewart. Freaking Asar, you could put Asar Thompson on him. These guys are just going to play physical. And this brand of basketball, yes, will get tested when it comes, when you start facing some of the upper echelon teams in the East, especially with a more refined offense going up against you, for sure. But when you're going up against these teams where it's like, man, you need to be on these big time stretches, or for the Magic, you just need to freaking just play together as a team at some point, because clearly that's not happening right now. The Pistons just seem to have every sort of advantage. The rebounding is there. They're starting to pass the ball more, and they're just gonna make life a living hell for either one of these teams that they're facing. And especially in a 7-game series where you're going to notice the tendencies, where you're going to make those chess moves. I think this Pistons team, they're ready for both of these matchups. They got the week in advance to plan it. I don't think any of these series are going past 5.
I completely agree with you. And then go back to the physical nature aspect of it. This is the funny part about how this can play out. The Orlando Magic this season lead the league in free throw attempts per game at 27.5. At third, the Detroit Pistons at 26.1. So a beat 'em up series like that one, I'm going to go with the team that's got the momentum on their side. Cade Cunningham coming back healthy. The entire team starting to kind of get their bearings back after a couple of guys had some knick-knack injuries here and there, because Tobias Harris was dealing with some stuff and so on and so forth. There was a couple of guys that kind of, towards the back half, those last 3 to 4 games, had to kind of sit out or play on limited minutes. They get some time to get rest. I'm going to go with that team as the high hand. Let's lean with that same physical nature of getting to the free throw line. The Pistons are top 3. The Charlotte Hornets are in the bottom 10. That's going to be one of those things, again, when you go back to that playoff whistle, dude, I just worry about a team like Charlotte in that physicality. It's going to be one of those things where Charlotte, very similar to that Boston Celtics team that I was referring to beforehand, the equalizer is going to be that 3-ball. If they can play with the kind of up-tempo speed that they've been used to and get a ton of threes up and knock them down at that 37% that they've been used to all season long, they can make it a series. But I agree with you. As far as I'm concerned, if I got to make a pick, Pistons in 5, kind of regardless of what team they get.
Oh, no, 100%. And even if when you think of the shooting, right, the recovery on this defense is insane for the Detroit Pistons. So even if you try to get these shots off, you're going to see Asar Thompson flying through. You're going to see whoever they have at that guard position, the perimeter guys, just all fly around the floor. So it's not only, the Hornets, no matter what, are going to get the shots off. You've seen what they did in that first playing game. They attempted, almost 53s, over 53s in that last playing game.
Yeah.
So it's not a matter of they're gonna take if they're gonna like stop them from shooting them, they're gonna shoot them no matter what. And you've seen that like when they're cold, you see that combo of LaMelo Ball and Con Knipple who went 2 for 23 in their last game. If I'm not saying it's gonna happen against them, but if you can stop the Hornets on the track there, there's no other advantage I see that the Hornets are giving them. I know again they're gonna make it a fun series, maybe closer on a game by game basis. But I think even like when you start like mucking it up into the fourth quarter, the Pistons should have the clear advantage. Jay, I'm gonna give my predictions. If it's against Orlando Magic somehow, some way, and the Magic try to turn this around, I have Pistons in 4. If it's against the Hornets, give me Pistons in 5.
I think if I had to go with a prediction for both, I'm gonna go 5 for both in favor of the Pistons. Pistons in 5 for both matchups. Again, I think that the series could be a little bit more interesting if it's against Charlotte, just because of the collective effort. I'm a little bit more worried about Orlando as far as the half court offense. We saw it the other night. Like, it's abysmal. The thing that's going to get Jamal Mosley fired at the end of the season, it sounds inevitably at this point, has a lot to do with not just losing the locker room, but quite frankly, the fact that they do not have an identity on either side of the ball right now.
This
If they
season,
just happen to luck themselves into the playoffs, I don't think they're going to find that overnight in a series against a Detroit Pistons team that clearly knows who they are right now.
I 100% agree with that. This Piston again, we're gonna have a lot of questions for this Piston team in the later series, probably when
Mhm.
we end up doing these predictions.
Yeah.
But I think this is a good time for against either one of these teams. That if you really want to make your mark on these playoffs, if you really want to show these guys that you're a top contender, you want to make a statement, win this comfortably.
Yeah.
Win this comfortably and say that, look, we are one of the top teams for a reason. And, people have been trying to convince themselves that maybe the Celtics, Knicks, even the Cavs, because of their experience, have like, these playoff edges against the Pistons, who are, again, relatively a younger team compared in comparison.
Hmm.
But the Pistons have a chance to really make at least a first round statement. And I think they could do this with any of these teams. So a short series, nonetheless. But I think we both want to see the Hornets play at least because, they make it at least a lot more fun. But Pistons should win these either way. Let's move on to the second series out at East, and we're going to go with the 2-7 matchup. We got the Boston Celtics. We got the Philadelphia 76ers. I feel like these teams face every other year in the playoffs, it feels like. And we have another round of this. Jay, it's interesting because this talent for talent, it's up there. But at the same time, you clearly see which team is more together, which team isn't.
Yeah, I think there's two main things that you have to ask yourself as Philly, because I feel like everybody's walking into this not just saying that the Celtics are favored, but should be heavily favored, and for a million different reasons, right? But I think if you're Philly, there's two things you have to ask yourself. Number one, are we getting Joel Embiid? Because if you don't, you might have got away with that at home against the Orlando Magic the other day, but you're not going to get away with it to win 4 games against the Boston Celtics. Number two, and I think even more importantly than Joel Embiid's health, which version of Paul George are you going to get? Because I'm going to be honest with you, even the Paul George in that game against Orlando wasn't anything to write home about.
Solid stretch in the third quarter, but besides that, yeah, pretty ordinary.
That was a game carried by Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe showing up big, paired with a out of nowhere performance, double off the bench for Andre Drummond, which like the dagger 3 down late too. Like, I mean, he was just,
in this game.
I mean, come on, bro. They had an out of body experience. That's one of the dangerous things about being able to have home court advantage in a play-in tournament game like that, right? Not only does it have the March Madness vibes of like you could get sent home after this, but the Philly crowd of all places, you know the role players are going to be playing with extra superpowers in those type of games. So that brings me back to Paul George. VJ was clearly ready for the moment, despite being a rookie. Tyrese has been that guy as a guy that has shown up in these big moments. Paul George is a guy, TV, we've seen it many times before, and I hate to do this to him. We've seen him fumble the bag in the playoffs, but also very similar to a handful of playoff chokers we talked about in the past. He's also a guy who tends to play really well when the expectations are low. And that makes me wonder a little bit. Could they make this a series because Paul George is just kind of playing loosey-goosey? Because, let's be honest, even Sixers fans aren't really expecting to come out of this series, as far as we're concerned, which takes all the pressure off of someone like him to go out and just be able to go out and perform, as far as I'm concerned. It's still Philly fans at the end of the day. So it's going to be a tough night if you put up a 2 for 17. But at the same time, They're underdogs through and through, and for some reason, Paul George tends to play better during that. So if they can get the underdog PG and they can get let's say semi-healthy Joel Embiid, I mean they can make it interesting, right?
They can make it interesting, but this feels like the same narrative we have with Philly every single year. Injuries. Is Joel Embiid going to be healthy? At least, especially this time. Now that bro, this guy literally had to get freaking appendicitis right before the playoffs. Like that is insane. This wasn't an on-court injury, y'all. This wasn't. This is literally appendicitis. Me and you can
Basketball.
get that in the
Oh,
next, like, me or you can get that in the next freaking 6 months for all we know. And this man got it right before the playoffs. Insanity. But my biggest thing here, and this is where I feel like the 76ers look. I love Nick Nurse. Go us a championship. But the accumulation of minutes over the season and the
mm,
amount that he's going to have to press Tyrese Maxey in order for them to stay in these games,
yeah.
it's just not going to be sustainable. And I just don't know where that second like scoring option is going to be. I love VJ. He was great. Freaking went chest to chest with Jalen Suggs during that playing game last time. But at the same time, you can't expect that much from a rookie. Paul George, he's going to be a mixed bag. And you can already see it in the play-in tournament. Nick Nurse is just going to trust like what 7, 8 guys in this rotation. A lot of the onus is going to go on Tyrese Maxey. And look, we talked about it. He's had an All NBA level season,
Mm,
but we've seen on the Celtics side, Derek White playoff moments. JB has been one of the best players this year. Jason Tatum gets another full week of rest to rest up that Achilles injury.
yeah.
Then you have all these guys who've had big moments in the playoffs, big moments in the playoffs like Payne Pritchard, and the bench players who have been pretty solid all year round. The system is just gonna win over there in Boston already enough, and in a lot of cases, like I mean, we talked about this like matchup like potentially happening like a few months ago. Philly can match up talent wise, but it's just not going to be on the court at the same time. So the Celtics clearly the better team, definitely a bit more together, and Tyrese Maxey's going to have put on some superhero type of performances if Philly want to have any sort of chance, and I just don't think that's sustainable.
Yeah, I think the main thing, if you're Philly, because I don't want to lean everything towards the conversation of just how Philly's going to get smacked. Because at the end of the day, before I say this, I will preface I have Philly losing in four. I will preface that by just saying that from the beginning. I feel like a lot of people have that. It's probably a very favorable pick right now. What I will say is there's three things that I think will help the Philadelphia 76ers at least make this a competitive series. Number one, we see the Tyrese Maxey that we've seen all year when he's been healthy. That version of Tyrese Maxey is a danger, and as a force on that perimeter, yes, you have guys like Derek White, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum that you can all deploy on him defensively. No one said the series was going to be easy, but at the same time, if I trust anybody as a perimeter shot creator in this playoffs, Tyrese Maxey is definitely up there as a guy that I trust, especially in clutch situations if the game is close down the stretch. We'll see how often that happens. Number two, I do think something that does help Philly a lot, if they can get Joel Embiid, which will also help, is they've got a lot of size. Neemias Keita and those guys have played very well throughout the year, but the size that the Philadelphia 76ers bring to the table with Andre Drummond, with Joel Embiid, with Adem Bona even, who got real tick in that game against the Orlando Magic. They have real size at that center position. Granted, it might be the only place they have real size across their main rotation. But
Right.
still, that could be an area where them attacking the offensive and defensive glass could be the one equalizer to the fact that the Boston Celtics can absolutely shoot the three ball to kingdom come. That's going to be the thing. And I think actually that kind of segues into number three. By hella high water, you're gonna have to pray for a Houston Rockets type of unfold a couple of times where they get them threes up and just maybe it wasn't their night. Now that hasn't worked against the Boston Celtics
Right.
too often,
Right.
but the law of averages does come and meet you in the middle every now and then, and make that's one of those things that the Sixers are gonna have to rely on, is hoping that that team kind of regresses more to a 35 to 36% shooting team as from beyond the arc, as opposed to that 36, 37, 38% shooting team they're capable of being. It's a lot of ifs, it's a lot of stuff having to break right, but when you're this much of an underdog, I mean, it's going to be a requirement.
Yeah, no, they especially against this like Boston Celtics team who feeds on the fact that they can just get extra shots like on you like every single time because one of the top rebounding teams in the league, one of the best offensive rebound teams in the league. If the Philly again want to keep this close, if they want to have a chance in this one, you got to hope. And we've seen it before. The Celtics get cold, obviously, but also they just need to win that rebounding battle. They got one of the best rebounders of this era in Andre Drummond. He needs to freaking be, you know, chest to chest with Nemes Keita and try to win a lot of those rebounds. But it doesn't just take just the bigs. You can look at Adam Bona, and he had like some big time hustle plays in that play-in game just a couple nights or just last night.
Mhm.
But Celtics team rebound. You like Derek White, one of the best rebounding guards. Jason Tatum, in the 16 games back, he's averaging 10 rebounds per game. Everyone needs to be locked into the rebounding, just so these Boston Celtics don't get their second chance points, which is a big part of their offensive scheme. So yeah, I think it's going to be a short series. I mean, there are paths to victory, and they have the players to kind of counteract some of the what some of the Boston Celtics' biggest strengths are, but the unhealthiness, the wear and tear throughout the season and just the fact that the Boston Celtics system and just like this whole team just being so cohesive together right now should be a short series. You have them winning in four. I'm gonna give a Tyrese Maxey masterclass performance in one of these games, and I'm gonna give Boston at five.
Fair enough. Like I said, I think it's four only because I feel like there are so many things that have to break right. It all does start with the Joel Embiid thing. I feel like if they don't have Joel Embiid, the series isn't close, regardless of how good Tyrese plays.
Yeah,
But I think that there's a few things there that can, again, 7 game series. These role players tend to pick their game up significantly when they play at home at Philly. Philly fans kind of evoke that out of you a little bit because you got to go home after these games. So that
yeah,
tends to be a thing that kind of brings the best out of them as well. I can see a world where some of these games maybe are close. I'm just trusting the fact that the Boston Celtics have two guys that, if healthy, are like legit MVP candidates, and right now they're both healthy. So that's a tough spot to be in.
yeah. We didn't expect the Celtics to be this healthy this late into the year and to be playing well this late into the year. So yeah, it's probably gonna be a short series in these bottom two series in the East. We both have Celtics winning pretty easily. I'm excited to see how BJ Chum does in the playoffs. So I want to there's like some of these rookies are gonna have play some big time minutes. This guy's gonna he's gonna need to be the second or third scoring option and Boston might feed that, but who knows? You might be a coming out party. We'll have to wait and see. Next series though, moving on to series three in the East, and this one another sort of rematch. I feel like this is like the third time they face each other in the playoffs. New York Knicks versus the Atlanta Hawks.
Yep.
People get excited for this matchup. Maybe lost a bit of its luster because Trey Young is no longer part of the mix. Obviously, King of New York. I swear every time I see a Side Talk New York video, they still saying F Trey Young, and this man's like playing for the freaking Wizards now, which is insane. But this matchup came by together on the last day of the regular season. The Hawks fell to 6, and luckily for my Raptors, they don't have to face the Knicks, who have mollywopped us all year. But the Hawks get that matchup, and they're absolutely rolling right now. Jay, what are you looking for in the series?
I think the biggest thing for me is how the New York Knicks decide to deploy their guys. I think that one of the more interesting things that we saw over the last handful of games is that Mike Brown made it very clear that the last couple of games were going to be an indication of what his rotation looked like. A few of those guys that kind of get bumped around in that rotation. Jose Alvarado, for example, didn't get too much tick, if not any tick, over the last couple of games. Mikal Bridges was a notable guy who kind of got his minutes pushed back in that stretch as well. They're in a mode right now where they are in do or die mode, right? And I remember Ian Bigley of SNY, he had went on a radio show and he said that this team and Mike Brown, they're not judged based off of what they did in the regular season. They're judged strictly based off of what happens in the playoffs. Well, what's funny about that is they're playing a team of the Atlanta Hawks that are playing with house money right now. I mean, they
Yeah,
weren't supposed to be here. You want to talk about having two totally different versions of pressure? The Knicks, at bare minimum, you got to get out of this round. At bare
yeah,
minimum, you got to get out of this round for this to even be relatively considered as a successful season. For the Atlanta Hawks, they're just the Pope waving at the fans, just letting them know, hey man, just a couple more games to be able to get those playoff checks in. Because as far as they're concerned, it's house money. I mean, all their guys, all their main guys on the roster signed under contract long term. Biggest question mark this summer might be Jonathan Kuminga. And even with Jonathan Kuminga being a big question mark, who says the Atlanta Hawks don't get a top 5 pick in this upcoming draft class, given the fact that the New Orleans Pelicans did the dumbest thing of all time last offseason to help them get another potential
Right.
player added to the mix.
Right.
This is the definition of a playoff series for the Hawks that's just right ahead of schedule. As opposed to the Knicks, I'm worried about what their mentality is going into this series. You are not only, I'm not gonna say heavily favored because I don't think the sports books necessarily have them blowing Atlanta out the water, but this is a series that, like, if you don't win, you have to remember one of the lasting things that happened to the New York Knicks last year was they lost to the Indiana Pacers in round. What was that round? That was in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah. Yes.
A series that, if I'm not mistaken, everybody basically was penciling, oh man, the New York Knicks are going to make the finals for the first time in 1,000 years. And they folded. Now there's a series where you're perfectly penciled in. Again, should be seen as the significant favorite against the Atlanta Hawks. Are they going to fold? This is a lot less about what happens on the floor to me, outside of the rotation thing, and a lot more to do about the mental. Can Mike Brown shake off whatever bad juju this team has had over the last 2 to 3 years, whether it's injuries or just coming up short in the playoffs, and finally, overcome that hump of having high expectations and falling short?
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's one thing to watch out for. And I kept note of this because they started doing this more way into the season, which could be a big thing for the New York Knicks. It's the Cat and Brunson pick and roll. They are
Yeah.
one of the bottom 10 teams in terms of overall season and running pick and rolls. And over the last 5 to 10 games of that season, they've been like spamming that Karl Anthony Towns, Jalen Brunson pick and roll. And looky here, when you have one of the best big man and guard duos in the league, absolutely dominant. How much are they going to use that come to playoff time? Because that could be a massive factor when facing up against the Atlanta Hawks, especially now they don't have that physical matchmaker, which they would have had in Jock Lando, who got injured in the Orlando Magic game earlier on in the season. They don't got much big. Don't got much big man depth left. It's just Onyeka Okongwu, and they freaking bring in Tony Bradley to try and try to handle some of these minutes. So my biggest thing here for the Knicks, and the reason why, yes, the Hawks have been damn good. I'm gonna talk about the crazy stats they had since the All Star break because the Knicks are catching them at a horrible time right now because the Hawks have been so good. But the way they're gonna win this game and the biggest advantage they're gonna have here is the freaking physicality. We talked about physicality for the Knicks series. The Hawks have no answer for trying to handle the offensive rebounding or just the physicality inside of a Mitchell Robinson, of a Karl Anthony Towns. And I think that is going to be the biggest advantage factor there for the New York Knicks. Because, yeah, even though like people are going to think like, oh, Jalen Brunson is obviously they're going to be the best player, the Hawks at least have guys that can like send at him, whether it's a Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a Dyson Daniels. They have multiple guys that can kind of throw on Jalen Brunson to make things difficult for him. They have no answer for some of these other guys on this Knicks team who have been pretty good, who are going to have a lot of opportunities here against, again, a very shortened Atlanta Hawks front court. But in this matchup, I think it's going to be, I'm not going to say closer than people expect, but I think the Hawks are going to keep a lot of these games close because they're going to take the Knicks out of their usual offensive scheme in that way. So it's going to be important for them to especially get those big men like early and often, try to get them involved so that they know, especially like against this like Hawks matchup, they know that this is going to be the clear advantage to have against them.
Yeah, I think that's one of those situations too where, again, you look at it where I know how reliant they've been on Jalen Brunson all year offensively. TV, this feels like it has to be a cat series though. It just feels like it through and through.
Yeah, exactly. This
I
has to
think
be.
that's just I think that and I think that's kind of what you're detailing at the end of the day is they have to be able to feel comfortable playing through Cat. One of the things that we heard throughout this season that was a very dangerous thing to hear from Karl Anthony Towns, mind you, in the last month, was he said he wasn't sure where he fits in all of this offensively for them. That's not great going into a series like this one where you probably need to play through Cat as a part of it as as opposed to trying to play kind of with him as a cog within the system. This is one of those series where you want to see the very best version of Karl Anthony Towns that you can get. And I do think it's going to require a little bit of step back from Jalen Brunson. But even more so, again, in that pick and roll operation, Karl Anthony Towns has to be better too, though. And that's gonna be major in a series like this one, where as far as I'm concerned, Atlanta might not have like the size, but the versatility and switchability defensively is there. The
Sick.
scalability from a positional guarding standpoint is there. So at this point, are you going to be able to exploit the one mismatch you destined to have, which is that Karl Anthony Towns is, I mean, easily the most gifted scoring big in this series, and that's even with Jalen Johnson being in that conversation.
Yeah, no, he's gonna have to play a massive, massive role, and this also too. And I just like I noticed this like when looking through the injury report, Onyeka Okongwu might not even play game one because of a finger injury too. So that even gives them even another less body for them to kind of deal with. So the big man battle has to be won. The rebounding battle has to be won if you're the New York Knicks. And man, if you're the guards, you gotta get ready to switch. You gotta get ready to run around because this Hawks team, especially on their offensive end, since the All Star break, they've been like one of just the best teams in the league. Like offensive wise, they have a point differential of 11.5, which is absolutely insane. And then the assists, number one in the league. 3-point percentage, number one in the league. It's these guys like know how to get each other involved, and it all starts with Jalen Johnson. Yes, you're gonna have the bodies there to kind of like match up with him in that sense, but at the end of the day, you need to be able to get ready to get out there on Nickeil Alexander-Walker. You need to get out there on CJ McCollum, who's been absolutely fantastic ever since coming over. So there's a lot of offensive options, like you mentioned, and you have to be ready to kind of be ready that it could be anyone from those perimeter guys that can go off, and you have to be ready to recover and make sure that your defense is stout, which has been inconsistent this year under Mike Brown because I think the offense has been the one that's kind of been carrying them throughout most of the season. But they have the talent there, but they got to be ready to like get to like be able to get out to those shooters and also just be ready to handle a lot of those perimeter guys out there in Atlanta.
I think again, Atlanta has a means here, and somebody that should be viewed as an X factor in this series because you don't know how many lives you get during this process, right? Because if you lose the series, you're going home, right? So that
Yeah.
is what it is. One guy I think is a huge X factor is Jonathan Kaminga because he's playing for some bread, right?
Yes, for
That's a
sure.
big thing to take in consideration. Not only is he playing for some bread, you have to factor in he's at a very volatile position when it comes to the Atlanta Hawks literal depth chart. I mean, if you really look at just the depth chart alone for the Atlanta Hawks, he plays in a position that has a lot of question marks as far as what the future of that spot is. I mean, Dyson Daniels traditionally plays a small forward for them, even though he's kind of like a tertiary guard. Of course, you have Jonathan Kaminga, you have Zachary Ricochet, you have Corey Kispert. What if they do luck up and somehow end up at the top of the draft again and can go get an AJ DeBonsa? Now you've created another circumstance for yourself, right? Like there is a world where Jonathan Kaminga, if he does not have a strong series, he could play himself out of Atlanta just as much as he played himself into it. So they had a really good stretch with him when he was healthy. There was up and down situations there when it came to him being healthy and on the floor.
Hmm.
He's gonna have to have himself a really good series, and I honestly think the X factor that he brings to the table, not just outside of playing for a chance to lock down long term money with his team, I think the athletic combination of him and Jalen Johnson could put so much pressure on the perimeter defense of guys like Mikal Bridges, guys like OG Anunoby. The fact that these two in particular play so physical, play so up and down, play so above the rim, that could cause some real problems for those two wings defensively. That could be something that helps open things up because Atlanta got the guard play. That's not the question.
Yeah.
And Jalen Johnson is a bona fide all-star. But if they can really punish physically the New York Knicks, it changes the psyche of the series a ton.
Yeah, they definitely have to be matching up in terms of the physicality there because they've been able to like beat down teams that way throughout a lot of their playoff series. I mean, yes, they've had maybe some stinkers here and there, but they're commonly in the second round, sometimes in the conference finals, and they've been able to do that through a lot of the physicality, like on the Knicks side of things. So Atlanta, you better be ready to match that up. Jay, final prediction on the series. Who do you got? How many games?
So I am gonna go with the New York Knicks, and I think they just have too much fire underneath of them not to come out of this on top. I am gonna say it's gonna be a 6 game series in my personal opinion, and I think it's because Atlanta has scratched, clawed, fought, and then some. And now they're playing with house money in the position they're in. But this team knows how to play good basketball. They play together. They move the ball. They know how to guard. The big question mark, of course, will be the rim protection without Onyeka Okongwu. Mo Gay, we gonna have to see what's up with you. Tony Bradley minutes potentially, a little
Yeah,
scary.
yeah. It sucks that Jock Landale isn't playing because he actually is one of those physical bigs and can actually stretch the floor. And the fact he's gonna be out for like what 2 weeks
I
to
think it's
start
two
for
weeks, yeah. So
yeah, dude,
probably
rough.
probably as much of this series is gonna
Series,
go
exactly. Yeah,
for the
yeah,
most part. So one of those situations where I mean their rim protection worries me, especially with the way Jalen Brunson gets to the basket. Atlanta's gonna scrape and claw because they've done it all season long, and I think that's gonna make it one of those things where this series is competitive. I hate to use the lame excuse or the lame mantra of like the Knicks just need it more. But like the Knicks just really need this one a lot
yes,
more than Atlanta. I think they're gonna play with their hair on fire like a team that knows that they got to come out with this one. You cannot have the season the Knicks just had as far as the way they did throughout the regular season. And not that they were dominant, but you can't have that kind of regular season and then fumble to Atlanta in the very first round in an Eastern Conference that still outside of Boston, people still feel is very wide open, even with Detroit being who they are, Cleveland being who they are as well.
yeah. I do have the Knicks winning as well. Honestly, I could see a world where this goes seven and Knicks have to win in seven just because the Atlanta Hawks can just flip the series in their direction that way. But I am going to agree with you here. I feel a lot more comfortable going Knicks in six. A lot of these guys are just a lot more proven playoff performers. I mean, their freaking defense is no slouch too. I know we talked about a lot of those perimeter guys. They have to deal with freaking Josh Hart, OG Anunoby, and Mikal Bridges throughout this entire series. So it's not going to be
Right.
any. It's not going to be a cakewalk whatsoever. So I do think the Knicks, especially their new additions, I feel like they have underrated depth, not crazy depth, but they have underrated depth
Mm.
as well. So I'm gonna have the Knicks winning. They have a few kind of like minor injuries they have to deal with going into this, but I do think they do end up pulling out the win. Jay, final series of the first round. We got the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on my Toronto Raptors. And thank
Mm-hmm.
you to the Orlando Magic for losing to the Maine Red Claws, the Boston Celtics C tier team, for helping us avoid the Knicks because Jay, here's a crazy stat. We lost every single game against the New York Knicks by 17 or more points. So I was not looking forward if that was going to be the series. I'm not saying that we're going to beat the Cavs, but at least I could find at least like different ways in this series where I can kind of convince myself it's going to be pretty competitive. But I want to hear from you first, from a non-biased Raptor fan. How do you feel like the series is going to go?
So I think there's a couple of things that actually are pretty interesting here. I was kind of looking over stuff, and there's three things that I pointed out that I feel like are going to be really important to consider as a Raptors fan in relation to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Number one, of course, they're coming in hurt. Of course they are. Because nothing else is new when it comes to them, right? And in this series, more particularly, they're going to be coming in with a hobbled version of Jared Allen. You remember the same guy who said that the lights might have been too
Yeah.
bright? That's the guy who's going to be coming in a situation where he's going to be playing against a Toronto Raptors team that loves to fly around, loves to get physical around the basket, and more particularly attacks the glass aggressively. It's a Darko mantra that you gotta rebound. I don't care how big or small we are as a team, you gotta rebound. It seems like is a mantra from Darko. So that's gonna be a big thing to take into consideration when you're talking about a hobbled version of Jared Allen. And honestly, I don't think, and TV, this leads me to my second point. I don't think we've seen Evan Mobley improve very much this season. I don't think he's improved very much at all. And that makes me worried because if he's capped out at the guy we've seen, I mean, I don't know if I'm worried about him. in this series. And I'm not saying that he's not going to have any impact. He's still a guy that has defensive player of the year caliber upside. He just came off of winning DPOY last year, and there's still some consistency there. If you can dang near play 4-on-5 when it comes to dealing with him on the offensive end because he's just not aggressive enough as a shot creator, you're kind of playing the same Cleveland Cavaliers team we've been playing for years, which is Donovan Mitchell, take over. Oh, D. Mitch, you're having a tough night. Instead of Darius Garland, give the ball to James. Let's hope he doesn't choke the game away. It's one of those kind of things. And it makes you really wonder, for a Raptors team that's just very hungry. I've watched all the interviews from Darko. He does not give a dang about the fact that they don't have playoff experience. He don't care at all about that. I think I saw something recently that he said, I think the quote was like, we're not playing overseas. They're not going to throw bottles at us and stuff like that. We're going to go out there and play, and they're nobody to be, the opposing team is nobody to be worried about this, that, and the third. Same thing with Scotty Barnes. Their leader says, we're not scared. We're not worried. You're talking about a team in Cleveland that has everything to lose. I go back to the same thing with the New York Knicks where I was talking about that. Cleveland has everything to lose. TV, if this doesn't work, guess who only has one more year under contract before he can become an unrestricted free agent?
D. Mitch.
D. Mitch. It creates a cloud over this team. If you flame out in the first round to the 6th, brother, it's a tough spot to be in. But guess what? That's the scary part about it, too, if you're talking about Cleveland, because that means D. Mitch might just go out there and average 40. That might just be the type of time he's on.
I feel like he's had those type of moments in the playoffs. Like, yes, he had maybe like a maybe one or two bad series here and there, but for the most part, he is one of the like top tier playoff performers.
Yeah, and I think that's the third point it brings me to. If Jared Allen's hobbled and Evan Mobley is TBD on what we're going to see from him in the playoffs, can Donovan Mitchell put that cape on? Because it's good. I feel like this is going to be a series. It's going to be required. It's going to be a hard time getting baskets against this Toronto Raptors defense. They've been good all year. They've had, Scotty Barnes, he's not going to get DPOY, but he's right there, TV. Just all respect. He's right there. And I know that if there's anybody that they have to deploy on Donovan Mitchell, I think they're going to trust him a lot to be able to get that assignment to a lesser degree. This is one of those series where, I'm not going to lie, bro, of all the series in the Eastern Conference, this feels the closest to me, personally. This feels the closest in the end.
I think you're probably right in terms of it being the closest. Knicks Hawks are kind of like around the same level for me as well.
Fair.
But when I look at the series, especially with this team, and people are going to point out, oh, the Toronto Raptors swept the Cavs 4-0 in their season series. Guys, that was all October, November. I'm not going to count any of that. That's when Lonzo Ball was the starting point guard for a lot of that time, and he was awful this year, no longer on the team. So I think, like, in terms of looking at the season series, I think that's unfair to say that because of that, that's some sort of advantage. But I will say, you mentioned Scotty Barnes not being scared. I feel like one of the teams that he just revels playing against is Evan Mobley and the Cleveland Cavaliers. He does enter the second gear where he just wants to prove that, because it's always been a conversation probably since college, probably since the high school days, him or Evan Mobley, who's going to be the one to make a bigger impact in their career, who's going to be the better player. Mm-hmm. That gives him that extra boost, and whenever he sees Evan Mobley, it's like he sees blood out there, bro. So I'm excited to see how he does in this series. And actually, looking at a couple of interviews before the game, before this podcast even started, Raptors and media availability, Colin Murray-Boyles mentioned in an interview that Scotty Barnes has told the locker room, I'm guarding D. Mitch. I'm guarding James Harden. And that's going to be my assignment. So he's up for the challenge. Usually he guards Evan Mobley, and to be fair, he's kind of, at least on the defensive end, dominated that matchup. But he's willing to take on the top guys, which is what you want to see from your locker room leader. But in terms of this matchup, I see two things happening here, and I think this is like what's going to help the Raptors, but also going to hurt the Raptors at the same time. Both teams don't have an answer for the other team's strengths, which is pretty crazy, because the Raptors I don't think have the guard defending ability to guard a Donovan Mitchell, to guard a James Harden. shout out Jamal Shed, shout out Jacoby Walter. They're solid defenders, but in terms of NBA level strength and being able to go side by side to deal with these guys, the Raptors don't have it. The Raptors absolutely don't have it. But on the Cavs side of things, they don't have the wing defenders to deal with a Brandon Ingram. I feel like Brandon Ingram's going to average like 28 points per game this series. That is like the big thing like I see coming on here. And he's going to need to do that because the Raptors are not going to have many other options offensively, especially a big thing coming into this playoffs is Emmanuel Quickly is dealing with two different injuries right now. One being plantar fasciitis, and two, he sprained his calf on the last game of the regular season, the one that we needed to win in order to get the 5th seed. So him not being on the floor, yes, people are going to make fun of the contract. People are going to make fun of his inconsistencies. This guy's like our first or second best three-point shooter on the team. Just his play style alone just means a lot, and especially in this sort of matchup. So, what's going to be the deciding factor here? I'm going to have the Cavs winning. I'm sorry, Raptor fans. I'm going to have the Cavs winning here. But the biggest thing here, and especially like in comparison to those matchups that we had back in October, back in November, the additions to the lineup, the Keon Ellis's, the Dennis Schroeders, the James Harden, these are the matchups that the Raptors haven't seen yet, which is going to be massive. And when it comes to the shooting, the shooting that the Cavs have, at least on the roster, going from Max Strus to Sam Merrill to Donovan Mitchell to all these different guys, if the Cavs start shooting well from three, the Raptors are just not going to be able to compete, unfortunately. They have guys that can score, get their bat to the basket, get to score in the paint, but the problem that's been all season long, and it could rear its ugly head if it gets out of hand, it's the shooting of the Toronto Raptors. That's why I'm really saying here, please, Jacoby, please continue that stretch that you had at the end of this season. Please, Emmanuel, quickly, please come back to this line to at least have some sort of, counteracting factor in all this. Because the shooting advantage does go to Cleveland. But, like you mentioned, the Jared Allen injury will help out on the boards. This Raptor team, bottom 10 in rebounding, but these guys are freaking aggressive on the defensive end. They need to be able to focus on that. I think that there's going to be times where they're going to catch this Cavs team off guard and be able, and their defense is going to, their defense into offense, which is basically the mantra of this team all season long. I think that can get them into a couple games. But overall, I think the perimeter scoring, the overwhelming amount of offensive options that the Cavs have, I think that's what's going to take them over the top against the Toronto Raptors. And I'm telling you right now, Jay, the second or third best player in the series might not be even a James Harden, not even a freaking Scotty Barnes. Watch out for Dennis Schroeder, bro. This man has it out for freaking Darko Rajakovic for how it ended here in Toronto. And this man is a petty dude, man. And he can, if he comes off the bench, plays that 6-man role well, I could see him average near 20 points per game and just be a freaking thorn on the side of the Raptors. And this guy's going to be blowing kisses, trying to go for the kill when seeing that red. So that's something else I'm trying to look out for.
Yeah, I mean, that's not somebody I would have thought of to keep consideration of, but I think that at the end of the day, in those kind of series, you never know who's going to step up, especially as a perimeter shot creator. And I think if we're talking more about picking the series, I mean, I'm gonna agree with you. I'm somewhere around 6 games in favor of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think this is one of those that you definitely don't want to go. If you're Cleveland, you do not want to go to a game 7, even if it is back at the crib. You do not want to go back home with the kind of expectations you have. You do not want an elimination game on your home floor against a hungry Toronto Raptors team to be the way that decides whether or not you stay in advance or you get sent home. That is not the situation you want to find yourself in. If you are Cleveland, you want to get this done in 4, 5, or 6. And I know that sounds like easy, obvious logic, but this is a team with their history in the postseason, particularly guys like Donovan Mitchell and James Harden. These are guys that do not want to see a game 7 at all in a series like this one.
No, 100%. I think I heard your prediction. I think you're going Cavs in 6. Yeah, I'm going to go with Cavs in 6 too. The biggest thing for the Raptors, if they want to have a chance, again, it's really unfortunate how they go against top teams because they absolutely do horrible against them. And I want to believe that they're going to be able to win the series. I actually saw one guy predict that the Raptors win in 7, and shout out to you. You have a lot more faith than a lot of Raptor fans. But there's just, again, a lot of factors that need to go Toronto's way in order to get this done, and that includes Scotty Barnes having to be one of the 2 best players in the series, which it's going to be tough, again, with the amount of talent that the Cleveland Cavaliers have. So hopefully the Raptors can keep it competitive, and I see it being competitive, but I do have the Cavs winning in 6, unfortunately. Jay, Time to go over to the West. And we're going to start off with the 1-8 matchup over there. Oklahoma City Thunder versus either the Suns or the Golden State Warriors. Take it away. I'm going to tell you right now, I have Thunder and 4 either way.
Might be one of our shorter segments. Not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's no disrespect. Don't get me wrong. Draymond put on a masterclass defensively against Kawhi Leonard. Steph Curry, he's gonna give you those kind of games. But to win 4 games against this team with the way that Golden State has been so up and down all year long, I mean, TV, could you make the argument that like this is right here with like the Sixers beating the Celtics as like the biggest upset possible on the board?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, yikes.
Yeah. This is it's tough either way. What I will say, if it's the Suns facing the Thunder, it's gonna be cool to see Dylan Brooks try to antagonize the team for 4 games. It's gonna be fun to see them go potentially 5. I'm gonna give honestly max. I'm giving this as like Suns in 5. If it's a Golden State Warriors, they're not winning a game, bro. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, like this team goes 10-11 deep. They have basically almost every advantage, especially like all with the perimeter players as well. The bigs are just going to be overwhelming. They got the we've seen a lot of these guys perform in the playoffs. Freaking Alex Caruso having one of his worst seasons statistically this year. You already know how the Brewers going to come by in the playoffs. It's just what it does, plain simple. It's the Thunder. It's the Thunder depth. It's the SGA, masterclass that he puts on whenever he's in the playoffs. It's just they just overwhelm teams. That's the thing. And the thing is when they go on those freaking runs and they score in bunches, that's just so demoralizing for either one of these teams. And although the Suns have been solid defensively, the Oklahoma City Thunder is a different monster. I would love to see Steph Curry do well, but again, he's coming off of injury. He had to go freaking 5 minutes over his minutes restriction yesterday just for them to freaking win a play-in game. He's going to come into the playoffs hobbled. So unfortunately, with either one of these series, I do want to see Curry, give it one more try. Obviously, we've seen one of his like early career moments, one of his defining moments of his career, hitting that game-winning shot over the Thunder. So seeing maybe a visual of that in the playoffs would be great. But it's going to be Thunder. It's going to be by however they want. Basically, do they want this done in 4? Maybe they slip up in 5. Who knows? I mean, like we saw last year. I mean, we kind of had the same feeling last year with a lot of these games that the Thunder are just going to mow through teams, and some teams surprise us. But I do think, especially in the first round, I do think the Thunder are going to win, and they're going to win quite comfortably.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Again, like I said, this is one of those that I feel pretty comfortable in, like kind of like bypassing, just because, like, again, you mentioned the Phoenix Sun series being a little bit more interesting. I agree with you. I think my rebuttal to that would just be like, if we're talking about Dylan Brooks, that means we're probably gonna be talking about the free throw line a ton too, and I'm talking about in favor of Oklahoma City, and
Yes.
that's just a tough spot to be in, bro. D Book, really solid lead creator. I think we have come to the point now, though. If you check the statistics, he's taken a dip in his 3-point shooting efficiency every single year. I think it has a lot more to every single year as of late. I think it has a lot more to do with the fact that he's just asked to do so much more on ball from a creation standpoint than ever before. I think it's a sign that, when you hear names like John Morant up for conversation as a potential trade target, like the Suns need to be one of those teams that are aggressively calling, because like he desperately needs another, real ball handler. Don't get me wrong, Jalen Green is still a microwave scoring type, but they're both 2 guards, and they need a real setup guy. They need a guy who can really. They need what they were supposed to get out of Tyus Jones all those, once upon a time, but never really were able to actualize. They need somebody like that, but they need somebody, I think, arguably more talented than that to really demand the kind of respect on ball to be able to maximize Devin Booker as well. That's where a guy like, Darius Garland came up at the trade deadline. It's where someone like a John Morant comes up. That's where, even to a lesser degree, a DeJounte Murray even comes up, if that's a
Yeah.
possible conversation, right? Like, I think those are the kind of guys that come up. But when you talk about a series against a team like the Thunder and they don't have that additional guy to be a setup guy, to be another dude who puts a lot of pressure on the rim, it does make it tough. The Suns have the favor of having 3 or 4 guys on that team that all shoot above 40% and on decent usage
I was
or
gonna say
decent.
top 5 and 3s in the whole NBA.
Yeah, and I believe 3 or 4 of their guys are shooting 40+% on like 4 to 5 attempts plus
Yeah,
volume per game, right?
yeah,
That can be its own version of an equalizer, but again, to win 4 games,
yeah,
tough,
yeah.
tough.
I'm gonna have the Thunder in four, just because I feel like out of every one of these series, this is like the one that's probably like more likely to be a sweep. But hopefully they can keep things close, make it entertaining. But I do think the Thunder, do pull it out. Hopefully J Dub actually gets it going in this series as well. I think this is gonna be a good type of series where if J Dub can get back to being the second best player in the Thunder in the series, it's gonna be good omens for the rest of the playoffs.
Mhm.
Next series we're gonna talk about the 2-7 matchup, the San Antonio Spurs taking on the Portland Trailblazers. Shout out to the Blazers, man, for taking down the Phoenix Suns in that playing game. Denny Avdia, 41-13, incredible performance there. The Spurs team, though, can they finally carry this over? This is like going right into the deep end, right? They've been a lottery team for the last 2 to 3 years, and not only are they back in the playoffs, they are back with some expectations being the number 2 seed. Jay, how do you feel about the series playing out?
I think Denny said one thing that I think is pretty interesting. He was on I believe he was on a post. I think he was on the post game, or I think it was something where he's discussing something with like one of those NBA Tonight shows. And one thing that he mentioned is like we kind of had a good draw because we're playing a team that doesn't have any playoff experience either. So we're all kind of learning this one on the fly, which I think is kind of a dope way to address it because, like, at the
Yeah,
end of the day, they are
it's
going to be
good.
considered heavy underdogs, right? Like, Portland's going into this as a heavy underdog because Victor Wembanyama is considered the best, if not one of the best players in the NBA, arguably top three, if not as low as top five. And Denny Avdia, although had himself a breakout season and has definitely been deserving of the All Star nod that he got and should be in that conversation for most improved player this year. Portland, Portland still feels like they're a season away, right? And so that's where things get really interesting. I think the very intriguing part about this series is going to be in a series with a lot of guard play. And I mean a lot of guard play on both sides. Can Victor Wembanyama impose his will on the inside? You remember that? You remember those first 2 games of the season, TV, where we were like, "Yo, Vic didn't even attempt a 3-pointer. He was just like playing NBA street around the basket. Didn't care about who was there. Just absolute mashing around the rim." I wonder if Vic goes back to the well with that. I wonder if he sees a series like this one, and you got a Donovan Clingan there, and you got Robert Williams III, who's an interesting fit in that situation as well defensively, but a guy who tends to not always be healthy through these series. I just wonder if Vic's like, you know what, bro, with all of this erratic guard play on both sides for both teams, do I just put my butt down by the paint and say I'm 7'6" and like, what are you gonna do about it? What are you gonna do about it against a team like this? I'm interested to see how Vic. I clearly have the Spurs winning the series. I have the Spurs winning. I mean, I'm gonna say because they're both two youthful teams, I'm gonna give them 5. But I'm more interested to see how Vic approaches the series more so than
Yeah.
I am worried about the stat line or if they win in 4 versus if they win in 6. I'm not really worried about that because it's their first series, so there's a lot of impressionable learning as we go. But I'm very interested to see how Vic approaches it, both offensively and defensively, in his first ever playoff series.
You see him like going like into the paint. I feel like especially in a matchup with Donovan Clingan, where yes, he is a good rim protector, but man is slow as molasses when trying to like go outside of the restricted area. This feels like a game where Victor Wembanyama is gonna show his like alien-like abilities by seeing a 7'5" demigod try and just like cross up like Donovan Clingan. I feel like that's the type of series we're gonna get here
Okay.
because Donovan Clingan, he's a good defender. He's a good drop coverage defender.
Mm,
Once you bring him out of that restricted area, this is where the defense of the Trailblazers gets a little bit iffy.
yeah.
I do. I think Victor Wembanyama is again gonna like take advantage of that. I think honestly, there's a good chance, especially if Victor Wembanyama starts dominating the the perimeter like that against a Donovan Clingan, they're gonna have to force a Robert Williams in there just because he's a little bit more athletic and at least move a little bit better. But then in that case, that's when Robert Williams goes in. That's when I see the kind of scenario that you're trying to paint out, which is the dominating on the inside, trying to like do those those putback dunks. Sometimes you feel like he's underneath the rim, he can't score, but he'll like just like move his hand just underneath the rim and just like toss it over, like just like that type of like alien like abilities.
Right.
But I do think that this Trailblazer team will make things difficult for the Spurs. I'm not gonna say that they're gonna win games, but I think they're gonna make things a little bit ugly, especially with the lack of shooting that the Spurs have right now. They're a bit like middle of the pack in terms of like shooting wise. Because the Blazers overall, I think they have the bodies to match up defensively. Now it's the offensive side where I'm worried about because there's just outside of Denny Avdia, there's just way too many inconsistencies for me to like really trust this Portland Trailblazer team. But they built their team based on the idea that they can just compete with anyone defensively, and they have the guys to do that. In Tumani Kamara, they have Drew Holiday. Donovan Clingan on the inside. Denny Avdia has shown over the last few years that he has definitely improved as a defender. So they have those defensive guys. I mean, Matisse Thybulle, they were deploying him a little bit in that last playing game as well. So they have bodies to kind of match up with the Spurs and their constant pressure to the rim, maybe potentially forcing them to shoot a lot more threes than they're used to. But at the same time, they just don't have enough offensive firepower. Yes, I feel like Denny's going to have a good series, but at the same time, they're gonna force we're gonna see this, and I'm excited to see how this does in the playoffs. But how much of a deterrent Victor Wembanyama is gonna be, and the fact that it's gonna like really force this 76 this Trailblazer team who will attempt a lot of threes. Yes, they do, but they are like one of the least efficient threes like shooting teams in the league. How much is that gonna like really like change up their game plan? I have the Spurs winning, have them winning in 5. I just like trust their guys again up and down the roster a lot more. It's going to be a lot more interesting when you go against a more playoff ready team. I mean, that's a pretty cool quote like you mentioned from Denny Avdia mentioning that they're two youthful teams. But I feel like this is the type of series where, depending on the matchup, you're just going to see just all facets of Victor Wembanyama's game, and I think that's going to be a bit more of like what the showcase is going to be in this series more than anything.
Yeah, again, like I said, I'm picking this series in 5, particularly just because I think Wemby is going to come out and really ball. I think this is he's one of those guys, and it's kind of silly to evoke an all-star game when talking about the playoffs, but I feel like this is a guy that if he played with the kind of intensity he did in an all-star game, what the hell do you think he's going to do in his playoff debut? Like,
Yeah,
just something about that just sends the like the message to me that like this guy is not only gonna come out and be aggressive. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes full blown try hard. Like I would
yeah,
not be surprised if this is a guy who wants to have like a crazy imprint debut to set the tone. Like, no, not only are we not too young to be able to make a run, not only are we not a team that should be counted out because of the fact that we don't have playoff experience. No. All the talent you saw all season long, it's real. It doesn't matter if we're using the regular season whistle or the playoff whistle. It's real. And I, as the catalyst of all of this, am going to show you just how real it is. And I think that's such an interesting spot to be in as the San Antonio Spurs getting a team like Portland who, again, kind of very similar to like the Hawks team where you're like, yeah, they're like a year too early.
yeah. No, I definitely see that. Another aspect of this game I'm like really interested to see is like I feel like especially like if it does start getting ugly between Klingon and Victor, especially when it comes to like the perimeter play, seeing a bit of Wemby's like playmaking skills because I feel like they're gonna send a lot of doubles, a lot of triples, and I feel like a lot of that. Of course, one of the biggest things about the Spurs is like them attacking the rim, putting pressure on the rim, being able to find those cutters, being able to like showcase that aspect of his game as well. So I think if anything in the series too, that's gonna maybe like raise some eyebrows. I think there's gonna be a nice playmaking series from Wemby because there's gonna be so many eyes from the Trailblazer team trying to stop him, especially when he starts going off. So it's gonna be interesting to see like how he's gonna be able to handle that playoff pressure. But yeah, like Jay mentioned, I think we both have the Spurs winning in 5, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think we both have that pretty comfortably. Jay, let us move on to the next series. It is the 3-6 matchup. Another one of those series, again, repeats of previous years. The Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Denver Nuggets. We've seen this matchup before. We've seen a nice, Ant versus Nikola Jokic type series. Jay, how do you feel like the series is going to go this time around?
Um, I feel a lot more comfortable about the Nuggets than I've probably felt about them in the past. In this particular kind of series, Minnesota's defense is just not the same. It's still good. It's still
Especially without Gobert on the court.
yeah.
Especially without Gobert on the court.
It's still good. It's still above average even. But I mean this Denver Nuggets team is just completes now. I feel like you get the step forward from Jamal Murray that we've been looking for so long. You're getting healthy at a really good time. As far as remember, they were dealing with injuries left and right. Peyton Watson, 2 to 3 weeks. Aaron Gordon, 4 to 5 weeks. I mean, it felt like everybody was missing time. Nikola Jokic missed time earlier in the year. It felt like everybody was just getting banged up. And it feels like they're finally, healthy and well put together. You still have your questions about Cam Johnson and his inconsistencies this year. That's been a big question to me personally, as somebody that I would probably pencil in as a real X factor normally in these kind of playoff runs. Instead, the X factor I personally have is a guy who we've seen do it before, which is Aaron Gordon. Like if Aaron Gordon can be any semblance of the guy that we saw last playoffs here, last playoffs, oh
Ooh.
Lord.
Yeah.
I mean, with this version of the New York, excuse me, with this version of the Denver Nuggets, and you get that, I'm not saying you got to drop a 50 piece, but I'm just saying, like, if you can get that kind of guy on both sides of the floor, man, Timberwolves are in a weird spot. And that doesn't even factor in the Anthony Edwards injury itself, which is its own can of worms that you got to focus on.
Yeah. It's weird because like I feel like the last matchup it was like a lot. There was like a bigger chance for it to be more competitive. I feel like the Timberwolves did win that matchup last time, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last time they were in the playoffs. But in this series, I mean, like we mentioned off the top, this Minnesota defense just doesn't like hit. It's not like as consistent as it was in previous years. Yes, Rudy Gobert is probably an all defensive level player, but this is like kind of using more of the argument back from his Utah Jazz days, where just the difference of defense when he's on and off the court, it's so staggering compared to previous years, which is weird because the Timberwolves actually have like a lot of those defensive, stalwarts that people were used to saying that, hey, look, this is not the Utah Jazz team. It's not like you have Joe Ingles, Grayson Allen, and those guys on the perimeter. You have a Jaden McDaniels. You have a athletic guy in Anthony Edwards. All these different dudes. But for some reason this year on the defensive end, without Gobert on the court, this team has looked like a completely different team. And with the Denver Nuggets, and like just again in comparison to both of these teams, just the inconsistencies overall with this Minnesota Timberwolves lineup, it's just staggering. Sometimes they go on these 5-game winning streaks and then lose like it's 6 games in a row. They just keep having these ebbs and flows where it's like, okay, what version of this team are you? Because you guys are supposed to build off what you had in previous seasons, and maybe a lot of that has to do with the Anthony Edwards injury, right? He's coming into this series a little bit hobbled. But in terms of reliability, in terms of again depth of the team, I feel like this Nuggets team is even deeper compared to their last matchup against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and the fact that Nikola Jokic is coming into this series absolutely on fire. Jamal Murray, of course, we talked about it in the All NBA picks that he is having one of the probably his best regular season of his whole career. It feels like hard pressed to think that you look at this Denver Nuggets team who has been the number one offense in the league all year round, and think that they're not going to be able to handle a matchup with Rudy Gobert and even like have like the type of game plan which we've seen in years past that takes kind of Rudy Gobert out of a playoff series. So I think with the amount of with the variety that they have on the offensive end, yes, the defense has a lot to be desired. I mean, I think this kind of reminds me of remember when they won the championship back in 2023 where you had that weird discrepancy where they were the number one offense and they were like a bottom 10 defense, kind of feeling like that. But at the same time, against this very inconsistent Timberwolves team, I do think it's going to be not as competitive as that last matchup. I think that the Nuggets do win this. I have it in 6, just because I mean, we talked about the freaking Anthony Edwards in the playoff type of moments. He does absolutely like thrive for these moments. But I do think the Nuggets as a whole team, I just trust a lot more here, and I think I have them winning in six.
Yeah, I think I'm in a very similar boat. I feel like at the end of the day, if you can get, Anthony Edwards back and, a guy who's been a really unsung hero for them since the trade deadline has been my boy Ayo Dosunmu, been playing really good basketball, 3-and-D wing across the board, has just really been able to do a lot of the things that felt like he never got to do in Chicago at a high level. His on-ball presence has been evoked a lot more often than I thought for this team. I did not think they would put the ball in his hands as much as they've been able to and been willing to over the last couple of weeks. But he's taken advantage of the opportunities. Offensively, I think that he's been a lot more capable of initiating on offense, kind of similar to his time in Illinois. Again, not what he was allowed to do as much of as far as exploring the studio space with Chicago. He's getting a lot of those things. And so I think he's going to be an interesting X factor, the same way a lot of people are going to point to what Julius Randle are we getting? Are we going to get a 20-point per game version of Jaden McDaniels? Like, there are a lot of different things where, as many questions as I may have defensively about Minnesota, I am equally as curious about what they plan on doing offensively against this Nuggets team. And this is not a Nuggets team that I think is like a juggernaut defensively, by the way. Statistically, there's a lot of things that do favor them right now where they've trended in a positive direction compared to years past. But
Oh, you know what the offense is? It's gonna be freaking Anthony Edwards. Because if there's one thing that this Nuggets team doesn't have, they don't have a counter to him. He's gonna have like, I have a feeling he's gonna average like a 33 to 35 points in this series, like easily.
I totally feel that. I think it's gonna be one of those things where he's gonna be one of those players. You go back to what I said earlier about Donovan Mitchell and having to kind of put the cape on. I
Yes.
see a lot of that in this series too, man. A lot of that in this series.
Yeah, no, I 100% see that too. Man, Julius Randle, I'm just trying to look at these stats between these two. One of the biggest like talking points of this here too, which they mentioned here, and this is kind of crazy. One of the better defenders on Julius Randle this year actually has been Denver Nuggets Spencer Jones, who holds him to like in the matchups that they face like under 45% from the field.
What the heck?
Like that's so. Spencer Jones has been kind of a thorn on the side of Julius Randle this year, and they're gonna eventually, I feel like this defense is gonna have to, zone in on Anthony Edwards at some point in the series. There's gonna have to be some release valves here at some point. And you mentioned Ayo Dosunmu, who's actually had again a really good end to the season, but also Jay, you can't, you can't, rule out the fact of a little bit of a revenge series here for one Bones Highland, who I think who again who's had a pretty good season for the Timberwolves and actually has been kind of a turning point in a lot of these wins for them.
Yeah.
If he comes in and like he's the type of guy to like see his former team and be like, you didn't want me on your championship team, you you thought that these guys were gonna end up being a more impactful player than me. I'm gonna be going for your neck. That feels like something that Bones Highland would do. That's something that I think the Nuggets might have to like kind of like focus on at some point as well. But there's just too many like players on that offensive end that's just gonna I think again, I use this word a lot, but they're just gonna overwhelm the Timberwolves defense at some point. And when it comes to like, especially the off-ball the defense this year, and we've seen like a lot of times. I feel like I don't know if you've like seen this on Instagram, but they're like a lot of times this year they've caught Anthony Edwards sleeping on the defensive end, especially when he's not on ball.
Mm.
And if that continues to be the case coming into this playoff series, the Denver Nuggets are one of the best cutting teams, one of the best off-ball teams in the league. So I think it's gonna like really like end up being a massive factor against this Timberwolves team. Like I mentioned, Jay, I have them winning in 6. What was your final prediction?
Same 6.
Yeah, I think them having that final matchup in 6 should be like kind of like around the same as I feel like a lot of people have it at. But the Timberwolves again, I feel like we've like there are times where it's like okay, the Timberwolves are definitely going to lose a series, like we mentioned before. Remember, I think like a couple years ago when we first started the ball with the whole Phoenix Suns stuff a few years back. You can't fully count them out. So you never know what version of this Timberwolves team we're going to end up getting. But both teams a little bit limping going into the playoffs, but I do think the Nuggets do have that matchup. Final series, Jay, going into the playoffs, we have the number 4 Los Angeles Lakers dragging them, like the carcass of the Lakers, into the playoffs at this point, taking on the Houston Rockets. I'm excited. This is one of the most exciting series I'm here to talk about. I want to hear your thoughts on it first. What are your thoughts on this Lakers Rocket series? Just because I feel like I don't know. Maybe it's because of like JJ Redick's comments like earlier, where it's like he's becoming like pretty vague in terms of like Luka and like AR's like status for this series. I know he said like indefinitely, but he didn't want to like really go too much like further into it. I feel like it's like kind of like a bit of a chess move until like as to like when they'll be back. So I feel like people like don't really know that yet. But the Rockets should win this, right? But I don't know. It just feels kind of like iffy, and there's something about the series that feels a little bit iffy.
From everything I've seen TV, and I'll kind of double check this, but if I'm not mistaken, everything is pointing to the idea that neither Luka Doncic or Austin Reeves are going to make it back in time for this series. Actually, there was a report that dropped, ironically, about 30 minutes ago from when we were recording this that says, while Reeves has remained in LA focused on returning to the court, Doncic went to Spain for specialized medical treatment to speed up his recovery. We already know that. Lakers head coach JJ Redick has already confirmed the duo will be out to start the playoffs against the Rockets, and a recent article from ESPN indicates that the franchise is moving forward, assuming neither will play at any point during the series.
Okay.
So it sounds like, don't get me wrong, they could be trying to still keep things pretty close to the vest, but it sounds like everything is indicating that they're not going to be playing in the series. Actually, a video earlier today shows that Luka is still in Spain as of us
Yeah,
recording this on
I
Thursday.
swear there was a report of him that saying he was in the. Wow, I thought there was a report saying that he's already back in the U.S., but I guess he's still in Spain now.
He was
Really
at a soccer game in Spain,
Inter-
apparently.
interesting.
So
All right, all right.
that's why I thought it was pretty interesting that you were as excited about this series as you were. Because for me, I'm like,
Hey,
it looks pretty black and white to me, TV.
hey, fair enough. Luca, but I guess like the biggest thing we could talk about here, and I think what a lot of people are at least excited about for the series, we got LeBron versus KD one more time.
True, true. Gotta love that, right?
You 100% gotta do that. But Jay, I'm gonna ask this question to you about the series, especially. Can LeBron do it one more time? Can he do this one more time? It is 41-year-old Braun trying to backpack this sort of Lakers team over the edge. I'm not saying it's like impossible because this Rockets team I mean, like, even though they are clearly have been um are clearly looking like the better team, there's just times where they kind of like, I feel like in a lot of these matchups kind of like underestimate their opponent.
Mm,
But like, what do you think going into the series?
I think, can he turn back the clock and get you a game? I do. Does this feel like the kind of series where everything points to we're downplaying him and he's gonna mess around and just average a triple double for the series or something ridiculous like that? Maybe. TV, they just shouldn't win the series though. Like,
They
I
shouldn't.
know that sounds crazy, and I know that's not like great analysis. So for all of my people that like are very used to me, kind of like going very in depth, like a lot of how this episode has been, I apologize. But like, this is one of those series that, like, of all the series in here, I was almost like the least excited to talk about because the Lakers just should not win this series. There's no reason why they should win this series, TV. There's not a single thing you can tell. Even with LeBron James, TV. Matter of fact, here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this on pod because that's exactly how we do it. This is how the sausage is made, they say. TV. Going into this series, they will be starting a starting five of Luke Kennard, Marcus Smart, Jake LaRavia slash Rui Hachimura. I would probably start Rui, but the depth chart says Jake LaRavia. Do with
Yeah,
that what you
they're
will.
probably gonna start Rui. He's been starting most of the year anyway.
LeBron James
Mm.
and DeAndre Ayton. Did I mention JJ Redick said Bronny James probably gets minutes? Did I mention that? Did I mention that? No disrespect to Bronny. He's been playing well in the G League space, and he's shown flashes at the NBA level. But you're telling me that Bronny is supposed to get NBA minutes in the playoffs against KD, against these guys. Now, let's go to the Houston Rockets, shall we? They got a lot of questions. Don't get me wrong, because they are quite banged up. But they're supposed to walk out a starting five of Amin Thompson, Reed Shepard, Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith Jr., Alperen Sengun, with Tari Eason and Clint Capella still as the backups. Now, how banged up is Houston? That's the equalizer. How banged up are they? We'll have to see. If the answer is everybody's full go, TV, if this series goes past 5 games, somebody folded. But if they're injured, I mean, they still shouldn't lose the series to the Lakers, but like I guess it could go 6 or 7 in that case. But this just does not feel like the kind of series that the Lakers should win. It just should not.
Yeah, this Rockets team. I feel like this Rockets team. I mean, is we've been trying to say it all year. We've been like wanting them to be that playoff contender, but then like there's just like these like these type of matchups, these sort of stretches where, yes, I think they went like recently on a 8 or 9 game like winning streak, if I'm not like mistaken. But then they just kind of like, again, they have their ebbs and flows. But against this Laker team, it feels like they have to win. If I'm gonna go with this, especially with the stuff that you were telling me beforehand about without Luka and like Austin being in this lineup, I say that this can go 5 games, maximum 6. Because LeBron James, I feel like in a playoff setting, yes, he has played a lot of third fiddle this year. But in terms of, bottling up that energy, and I think this week rest definitely helps. If it means bottling up that energy and having to put on this, again, the superhero man cape one last time, I think this version of LeBron James can drag at maximum 2 wins against this Rockets team.
Can I throw out one more caveat for you against the Lakers that unfortunately does derail this?
What?
There is news that LeBron James is currently dealing with an illness.
Yeah, he's gonna. If it's an illness, he'll probably play through it. I have a feeling.
Oh, he's gonna play.
Yeah,
But I guess you're looking for flu game Braun, it seems.
yeah. I just think that when it comes, like, at least with LeBron James, yes, he has. It's like a different, like 100% different version from what we're used to. I mean, people are gonna say, "Well, LeBron's gonna have to do it one more time. He did it with 2018. He did it with 2007. Yada yada yada." This is not the same LeBron, and I think we can both attest to that.
Mm.
But in a series where I feel like it is against a Rockets team where I feel I don't know, I just feel like they're like a volatile bunch. They're a volatile team. They should be beating this. They should be beating this Lakers team, but they've also like had their moments where they they should be better than they are. And I feel like this entire season, like they've kind of like at certain like points where they kind of like fell under those expectations. They're just like one of those teams where I just like don't fully trust. And that's why I feel like I'm still gonna go with the Rockets in 6. I just feel like there's gonna be like 1 or 2 times where they just don't feel like they're on the same page, and I think the Lakers, the pecking order is clear. LeBron's there, and the rest are gonna have to show the heck up. I feel like the Rockets are gonna have moments where there's just gonna be just some sort some sort of confusion. And I feel like that team is just not fully together. Obviously, not to the to the extent that the Orlando Magic that we talked about like earlier on in the episode, but it's just such like an inconsistent team that I feel like the Lakers, and again the coaching that they have as well, and like JJ Redick, there's gonna be a game that they're gonna steal that they have no business winning. And I feel like they can get another game plus that. So I will go with Rockets in 6.
Okay. I'm sticking with Rockets in 5 because at the end of the day, do I think Braun can get a game? I do. Now, we also said that in that series where they were supposed to beat Minnesota.
They got swept last year. Oh no, they what did they lost in 5 or 6?
They got swept.
They got swept. Yeah, they got swept.
So,
yeah.
And we thought after 2 games they were going to at least get 1, and they never got it. So I'm worried about that a little bit, but this Rockets team doesn't have the same intestinal fortitude, so to speak, that Minnesota team did that year.
Yes.
So I'm going to give Braun and those guys a game, but everything's just pointing in the wrong direction, bro. Everything is pointing in the wrong direction. Braun being sick a few days before the playoffs even start. No possible return for either Luka or Austin Reeves in time for the series. Like, everything, I mean, didn't JJ Redick just say that DeAndre Ayton doesn't know how to catch the ball like just a couple of days ago? Like everything feels like it's falling apart with this team at the worst time humanly possible.
Hey, look, if the Rockets are going to dominate, which they should, I think we both we both talked about that. One of the biggest things here, and especially with a DeAndre Ayton led front court, the rebounding is going to be massive. Offensive rebounding is going to be massive. The chance points is going to be massive. It's about really really establishing like their presence on the inside, which I do think they're gonna do. I mean, they don't have like many shooters outside of KD and like Reed Shepard overall anyway, but they're gonna have to really really test out that Lakers health and really really go at them in the series. They can't be saying just because there's no Luka Doncic, there's no Austin Reeves. They need to show again. You mentioned that mental fortitude to go through the series. If they are really trying to become these contenders this year, even though they've had again their rough patches like up and down this season. I mean they are. I mean they still are a 52-win team, but they have had especially like post All Star break a little bit of some inconsistencies there. They need to get the series done, but I don't fully think they're gonna do it. I think they're gonna again let some games like slip that they're not supposed to, but I still think they're gonna win 6. But there's gonna be some like pretty big blowouts in there, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think this is one of those series where I feel like it kind of speaks for itself. If the Rockets fold this one up, even if they win, if this series goes 6 or 7 games, it tells me that the Rockets are nowhere close to being the type of title contenders we thought they were when the season started. Because
They,
as far as I'm
I
concerned, I
I
don't
don't
think,
think that right now. I don't think that.
and I think it would only further reinforce it. Because if you're telling me you need Fred Van Vliet and Steven Adams back in order to like make it where you have a definitive series victory over the Lakers at their current state, you're clearly not ready to be able to then what in the very next round you'd be catching the Spurs potentially. I mean, excuse me, you'd be facing the Thunder. Yeah, no, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Absolutely not.
yeah. I'm just like kind of like looking at like their games throughout like post All Star break. They've had some like they've had definitely had some blunders like that. That loss against the loss against the 2 bad losses against the Lakers. You have a loss against the Chicago Bulls, which looked pretty bad on their half. It's they need to make this quick and easy. They need to make this quick and easy. Will they do it? We have to wait and see. But let us know down below what you guys think about this series, as well as all the other series that we talked about. Do you agree? Disagree with our predictions? We want to hear your thoughts down below. Jay, just one quick question before we head out. Out of all of these series here, which is the one you're going to be tapped into the most,
Ooh, tapped into the most.
or most excited for?
That's a great question. The series I am the most excited for. Okay, I'm gonna answer this from two perspectives. The ball watcher fan in me, the guy who just wants to watch dudes hoop, and then the analytical like nerd basketball side of me has two totally different answers. So as far as like just going out and hooping, the series I'm the most interested to see really is that Nuggets versus Timberwolves series. Because I am just interested to see what this looks like in this version of both of these teams. Because it's a matchup we've seen so often, it's not really an X's and O's game anymore. It really is just like, our guy's gonna go out and ball? And can Anthony Edwards rise to the occasion? Can Ayu Dosunmu be the X factor he's been for the last couple of weeks? On the opposite end, are we gonna see Aaron Gordon be that guy? Tim Hardaway Jr. is campaigning to be Sixth Man of the Year, right? Like, those are all different things that I'm kind of factoring in. From an analytical standpoint, and this might sound weird, but from an analytical standpoint, TV, I want to see how your Raptors fare against Cleveland. It might not be everybody's favorite series, but damn it, it's gonna be mine this run around. I'm gonna be tapped into Raptors Cavaliers pretty heavy. I am really interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. I mean, obviously, I'm gonna be tapped into that one. That is my team. I might. I'm super excited to hopefully be able to go to Jurassic Park. I mean, freaking the Raptor fans are gonna show up for that. I'm hopefully gonna be back in there. Obviously, I'm gonna be tapped into that one. But another one of those series, like I guess, funnily enough, it's another like E series I'm super excited to watch. The freaking Knicks Hawks. I'm just like intrigued to see like those like litany of guards, the litany of perimeter players that the Hawks have, and again playing with house money. I mean, even like without this year, you might like you mentioned that like when we were talking about that series, the top 5 pick coming. They're like, man, if this doesn't work out, we could just add another like blue chip young prospect to our team, and we're gonna be Gucci for the next few years. If they end up actually competing well and potentially taking down the Knicks, the whole trajectory of this team changes, especially with a new pick coming in next year. So I'm excited to see that. And I'm excited to see how Jalen Brunson's going to find some counters to the amount of guards that they're going to be trying to throw at him from the Atlanta Hawks perspective. So super excited for that. And hopefully, we get a dominant Cat series as well, because we've been waiting for that in the playoffs, especially on the Knicks side. I want to see if he's going to be able to take care of that matchup. But yeah, let us know down below what you guys think. Agree or disagree with these predictions. We're super excited to get into them. We're super excited to see how these series play out. But it is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Jay, what do you have to tell these beautiful people before we sign out?
Yeah, man, locked into the playoffs. We're at that point now where if you guys are not familiar, we tend to react to every single game of every single series all the way up through the NBA Finals. And then, of course, on the podcast, we both end up bouncing ideas off of one another and having an even deeper conversation about some of these games. So you'll get a 1 minute kind of quick recap, 1 minute to 2 minute, quick recap with some thoughts after these games. But, at the same time on the podcast where we really get into the weeds. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, this is definitely the kind of podcast for you. We definitely take things beyond surface level of who had what box score and things of that nature. We go a lot more in depth, and it kind of helps a lot more in terms of understanding the difference between regular season and playoff basketball. Because there really is a difference. Believe it or not, there truly is a difference between the two. And we tend to I think we tend to do a pretty good job of kind of explaining what some of those differences are by breaking down the game by game, night by night, series by series, seeing these teams play. Basically a live chess match every single game.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm already like kind of in the mood of that. Like I would be recapping some of these player nights, and they have been absolutely fantastic basketball. So I'm super excited myself to start talking into these playoff matchups. We're gonna be, me and Jay usually like end up picking up our series that we want to be focused on ourselves, and we kind of grow with that throughout the whole playoffs. So I'm excited to be doing that. And of course, we're gonna be back next week in the pod, breaking down as many of these series as possible. We're gonna have like 1 or 2 games through the series by the time we link up next. So be on the lookout for that if you want to see some early playoff reactions and breakdowns when we get back to it. But yeah, that is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure you check out all of our social medias. Our social medias down here below, like I mentioned before, the TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, podcast forums. Please check out all of that over there. Our individual stuff. We're going to be locked in through those as well. And if you're a Raptor fan and you're checking out this, you want to check out TV on Basketball, because I'm going to be super duper locked in when it comes to that to the Raptors playoff run as well. And so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, Jay, thank you. This is the end of today's episode. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you all have a fantastic day. This is TV. This is Jay. We're signing out. Peace.